Najee Harris, I had him go 18th overall to the Miami Dolphins in my mock draft. That is on Tide109.com. I released on Monday. We dove into that a little bit on the debut edition of Off the Edge. Last year, Najee Harris had a stupid season. I mean, just something ridiculous. To have only played in 13 games and rushed for 1,466 yards and 26 touchdowns, plus catch 43 passes for 425 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is something that should seriously be marveled at. Especially when you're talking about a guy that most people expect to run a 4.6 40. The 250 carries last year can be a little bit concerning to NFL teams. The 4.6 40 situation will also be very concerning to NFL teams. And the 26 touchdowns, not something to really marvel at when projecting to the NFL level, simply because guys don't score 20 rushing touchdowns in the NFL anymore. This isn't the LaDainian Tomlinson, Sean Alexander, Priest Holmes era of NFL football that I was introduced to when I was a young ward getting into this sport. It's not the same. And that's fine. But the thing is with Najee Harris is everybody wants to compare him to Derrick Henry. And I get it. He had a ton of carries. He broke all sorts of records at Alabama. In fact, he is the all-time leading rusher, all-time leading rushing touchdown leader, all-time scrimmage yards, and all-time total touchdowns by non-quarterbacks at Alabama. He holds all those records and more. He's a freak. He is 6'3", 230 pounds of NFL freak in the most positive sense. And he's got a lot of tear. It is what it is. 638 carries over 4 seasons. That's a lot. But he at least has the benefit of teams not worrying about that as much because they know what they're getting. They're usually going to get a running back for the season for the contract for which he is drafted. Not as often are teams looking at a second contract with running backs. If you can play yourself into one, that's great. Hey, and I think Najee Harris is the kind of guy that can potentially do that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, with Najee, what concerns me is the speed. And I mean, concerns me as far as him being a first-round running back. I think he'll be successful no matter what round he goes in because he's a damn good football player. But that speed aspect, there's a reason, as much as I don't, as much as I'm not crazy about their content much anymore, there's a reason Pro Football Focus thinks he's the third best running back in the draft, behind Javonte Williams of North Carolina and Travis Etienne of Clemson. And it's because of the speed factor. For all the times Najee Harris would break loose, how often would he legitimately break loose and score a touchdown? See, even Derrick Henry at the NFL level is able to carry that off and bust off those massive runs. But we haven't seen that much from Najee Harris. We've seen the hurdles. We've seen him get out in open space. We've seen him break plenty of tackles. And we've seen him be an incredible playmaker. But that top-end speed is something that is almost a requirement of first-round running backs these days. Look at Ezekiel Elliott and look at Saquon Barkley. They're big, beefy running backs similar to Najee Harris, but both have the breakaway speed to score from anywhere on the field. Now, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I am not saying that Najee Harris will not be successful. I'm not saying that he's going to have a tough time. I'm not saying that teams aren't going to like him. I'm not saying that I think that he'll have a bad or even a tough career. I'm not saying that at all. I think he's going to be incredibly successful, and he is one of 4 Alabama players that I would be perfectly fine with the Pittsburgh Steelers drafting at number 24. And even if I don't think he should be a first-round pick because of the speed factor, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody saw this kid, this grown-ass man, if they saw him at late in the first round and said, okay, we see all the leadership capabilities, everything he did as a senior at Alabama, whether it was from the marching to just being an overall leader through the pandemic to what he did on the field to help lead this team to victory, time after time carrying the football and toting the rock and being protective of it and advancing it down the field. If a team sees all that and they say that's a first-round guy and we need a running back, he's our guy. He's going to lead us for the next 4 or 5 years. And if he gives us more, that's great. If not, that's what we're investing in right now. And that's the best thing about being a first-round running back that isn't a top 10 pick. Because say what you will about Saquon Barkley and say what you will about Ezekiel Elliott, they've got it rough right now. They've not. That neither one's been to the playoffs. Now I know Saquon has only been in the league 2 years. He's been injured for an entire one of those. They're not going. The Giants are not going to the playoffs anytime soon. Sorry, Benedetto. It's not happening. Team's not great. And the reason why is because they drafted Saquon Barkley. Now, I know that's difficult. Good players, great players make great plays. Great players lead to winning. And that's all well and good. But the way the NFL is structured now, and you can look back on Tide 109, I broke down how the situation handles. Adrian Peterson never won a playoff game. 7th overall pick. Minnesota Vikings were pretty good under his run. He won an MVP, ran for over 2,000 yards in a season. Never won a playoff game. Not one. The only running back to lead the league in rushing and win a playoff game since the LaDainian Tomlinson Priest Holm era of NFL football back before 2005 is Derrick Henry. He's the only one to do it. Every other running back that has been drafted that high has not been successful in terms of team success. Yeah, they're running for a gazillion yards and they're burning their bodies out, but by the time the team is successful, they're burnt out themselves and they cannot be successful. Leonard Fournette was the other one, actually. Yeah, technically he counts, even though he ran for like 300 yards. But by the time those guys, the teams around them are built, the team itself is not successful. Now, yes, Ezekiel Elliott was on a relatively successful Cowboys team there for a short while. The team had a stupid offensive line in front of him. Probably would have won some playoff games had Tony Romo not had to retire and Dak Prescott not been the quarterback. I mean, it's not a knock on Dak. It's reality. So when it comes to Najee, that's the benefit of being a guy that's a fringe first rounder. Like, yeah, you can take that cocky and say, oh, you know, they thought I was only a 25th overall pick, so I'm going to wear 25 in the NFL, and I'm going to prove them all wrong. That's great. Go do that if that's your thing. But you're going to a better football team in those 20s. You're going to a better football team in the 30s and in the second round. You can feel better about yourself from a team aspect. And what did Derrick Henry tell Barstool Sports he got paid in? He got paid in rings and all these other sort of things, right? That would be the same thing with Najee. Yeah, that first paycheck is not going to be as great as Max. It's not. It's not going to be as great as Devontae's and Jalen because they got drafted way higher than you, and they put in just as much to that Alabama Crimson Tide team as Najee did. But at the end of the day, he'll go to a more successful team and see more success himself. And at the end of the day, that's a positive. What do Alabama fans want to see out of the alumni? They want to see him go to Super Bowls and win Super Bowls. This year actually broke a 16-year streak of Alabama Crimson Tide players playing in the Super Bowl, or at least being active, because O.J. Howard was hurt. So technically, I mean, O.J.'s getting a ring, don't get me wrong, but technically, the Super Bowl was void of an Alabama Crimson Tide player this year. Now, a lot of that has to do with the Washington football team hoarding a lot of them on defense. But at the end of the day, these guys that we all love and we all reminisce throughout the Nick Saban era, they're not winning Super Bowls. And it's a shame. And it's because a lot of them go to situations where the team is floundering and they're not great. And that's understandable. It's all well and good. A lot of times, you look at Julio Jones, they're the reason a team is able to turn things around and become a contender. That doesn't last forever. Just ask Tommy Paradise. But overall, I think this is a good thing for Najee to be where he's at. If he goes out and he runs a 4.5 and he becomes a first-round pick, more power to him. If he goes out and he runs a 4.6 and he stays at that fringe, late first, early second, it's all going to work out for the guy. Because I think no matter the situation, he is going to be a great running back. But you have to be able to be willing to pair yourself with being a great running back on a great team, so that with the limited amount of time you can be in the NFL as a running back, you're able to benefit from it.